Hello, and welcome to Supposedly Fun. My name is Greg, and I am here today to do a book haul for the month of May. I didn't get it filmed in the month of May, so you're getting it at the beginning of June. It's fine. This is another exciting book haul. It's on the larger side, not as large as last month, which was enormous. It will be linked down below, but still a large book haul, and I think a good mix of upcoming releases, new books, backlist titles. There are some novels, some plays, story collections, and at least one nonfiction book. We'll get into all of that. First, just a quick comment. You may have noticed as we have done book hauls throughout 2025 that my buying patterns have shifted a little bit. I've been relying on getting stuff from publishers a fair amount. Obviously, in the United States, the economy has been all over the place. And as part of that, my job has slowed down a fair amount. So there's not as much spending money, and therefore I don't have a whole lot of money to spend on books compared to recent years when things were doing well. So I have started to rely on publishers and see what they're willing to send me, and also on my local used bookstore, which has trade. So I don't have to spend money to shop there. I just have to keep books going in and books going out to them. So you may have noticed that that is the direction the wind has been blowing for me in 2025 with book hauls. But, so far at least, it has kept me receiving or able to bring in a lot of interesting books that I am happy to have in my library and that I think you might be excited about too. Because one thing I love about book hauls is they help you find books that you might be interested in as well. So without further ado, let's just jump in because we have a bunch of stuff to talk about. And I will tell you about which books came to me from a publisher as we go along. The first book I want to tell you about is The Wilderness by Angela Flournoy. Now, this is an advanced reader's copy, so that might tell you this is one of the ones that was sent to me by the publisher. This is going to be published by Mariner on September 25th. Release dates can change, but that's what it is for now. That's what it says on the spine of this advanced reader's copy. So this is one that I reached out to a publisher and they sent it to me. Now, why did I reach out to a publisher for this one? It wasn't just the description of the book, although that did help. It's that Angela Flournoy is the author of a novel called The Turner House, which I read and absolutely loved in the days before I had a BookTube channel. So I never really got an opportunity to gush about it on BookTube. And this book sort of gives me an opportunity to give you a backdoor recommendation and say, if you haven't read The Turner House, it is a wonderful book. I highly recommend it. Her new book is The Wilderness. I have been waiting for another book from Angela Flournoy since The Turner House was released. And here it is. And here is what it says on the back. An era-defining novel about 5 Black women over the course of their 20-year friendship as they move through the dizzying and sometimes precarious period between young adulthood and midlife. In the much-anticipated classic-in-the-making second book from National Book Award finalist Angela Flournoy. There are some more specifics on the inside, but I think that sort of gives you the gist. It is also described as a masterful and kaleidoscopic follow-up to The Turner House, and it just sounds absolutely fascinating to me, and I cannot wait to read another book by Angela Flournoy. In my book hauls, I love to read a little bit from the opening of the book, and this one will be no different. So here is how this opens. Part 1, You Can't Pronounce It. Some descendants thrill more than others. Landing at Charles de Gaulle is not thrilling, as it's one of those major metropolitan airports tucked away from the city in a way that prevents worthwhile aerial views. In Cairo, depending on your point of origin, if you sit on the lucky side of the plane, you might see the pyramids at Giza brushing up against desert on one side and high-rises on the other, as if the pyramids were digitally superimposed instead of the oldest structures there. Arriving at LAX, if you're traveling west from New York, say, you might have to wrap your head around snow-capped mountain ranges, smog-blanketed valleys, and the glinting Pacific before touching down. When the pilot announced their descent into Charles de Gaulle, Desiree looked out the window, expecting to see what? The Eiffel Tower, maybe? She saw nothing so spectacular. Deep browns and greens, the blank gray of cement apartment buildings. Having been to Charles de Gaulle Airport at least twice, I think 3 times in my life, that actually is true in my experience of it. Cannot wait to read this. So excited to have it. Thank you to Mariner for sending it. And if you are interested in this book, you may pre-order it. right now, because pre-ordering is a very good thing to do. It lets publishers know how many copies of a book they should print. It helps authors because it lets people know that they should get behind a specific book because people are genuinely interested in it. And it helps independent bookstores if you do it through an independent bookstore or bookshop.org. All of the links I have down below are to bookshop.org. Those are affiliate links. If you use those, it helps me. Otherwise, you can also request from your local library. And if they're not getting a copy of a book, you can request that they purchase a copy. It's a good thing to do. Support the book industry, support your libraries, support independent bookstores, and support authors of things that you like. If I have a little extra money when the time comes, I might even buy myself a copy of that book because I would love to support Angela Flournoy. Anyway, next, Via Appia by Giovanni Martins, translated by Julia Sanchez. Julia Sanchez translated Boulder by Eva Baltazar, which I absolutely loved. I think she has good taste in translations. And this was sent to me by FSG Originals. Thank you to FSG. It will be published on July 1st, and it sounds absolutely fascinating. So this is another one that's coming up, and I'm very grateful to have received a copy of it. From one of Brazil's most acclaimed new literary stars, a 21st century epic set in Rio's largest favela. I actually talk about both of these books in my recommended summer reading for upcoming books that will be published. I'll link that video down below as well, so you can go there for a little more. That's kind of why I'm sticking to a shorter description, and there's a very short description on the back of this one. Let me see if there's a little more, because for this one I feel like you might need a bit more of a tease. The lives of these 5 friends are brothers Washington and Wesley work part-time as servers for kids' birthday parties. Their neighbors Douglas, Murillo, and Beale split an apartment not far from the beach on Via Appia, the main avenue of the favela Rocinha in Rio de Janeiro. The lives of these 5 friends are far from the ease and leisure that many associate with one of Brazil's most photogenic, well-known cities. Still, they manage, and life on the Morro, the hill, is good. All of this is upturned when, in November 2011, the UPP, Brazil's militarized police, occupies Rocinha as part of the pacification efforts in anticipation of the World Cup. Via Appia is divided into 3 parts: the expectant anxiousness before the UPP invasion, the chaos born from their installation on the hill, and their silent withdrawal from the favela 1 year after. Giovanni Martins' prodigious debut novel knits together the dramas and dreams of the favela during a peak of unrest. Like the boom boom cat of Brazilian funk, the unbridled ambitions and the resolute friendships of these characters blare through Via Appia, delivering a resonant counter-narrative to the notion that violent interventions are the state's only remedies to social problems. The favela retorts, life is the answer. It sounds so interesting, and I cannot wait to read this book. And here is how it opens. Part 1, Rio, July 27, 2011. They aren't singing happy birthday for another hour. Washington paces up and down the room, eyes the clock. It's the same old story. When you're kicking back on your time off, the pointer shows no mercy. A month vanishes in 5 minutes. But when you're at a bad job, everything drags. More so when the munchies are ramping up. He serves whole wheat pastries at the tables with zero enthusiasm. Those ricotta pastels never looked more appetizing. There was a stronger word than bad in here. But yeah, I was so excited to have this book. Thank you to FSG for sending it. And again, if you're interested, pre-order. There's still time to do that. The next one might be a bit of a niche book, unless you are someone who, like me, is fascinated by the Pulitzer Prize or are engaging with a Pulitzer Prize project of your own. If you're unfamiliar, I'm reading every book that has won the Pulitzer Prize for fiction. This would be a sort of addendum to one of those books, When All the Men Wore Hats by Susan Cheever, on the stories of John Cheever. So John Cheever won a Pulitzer Prize for The Stories of John Cheever, which was a collection of his stories. And I read it about 20 years ago and remember really liking it. So I'm looking forward to rereading it as part of my Pulitzer Prize project. And the cover design of this sort of mimics the cover of that book, in case you're not familiar with it. And this sounds super in my wheelhouse, and I can't wait to get to it. A sympathetic and illuminating account of the stories of John Cheever and the intersecting life and work of the legendary writer as told by his eldest daughter. And if she is anywhere near as talented as her father, I'm in for a treat with this book, which, by the way, will be published on October 28th by FSG. So again, thank you to FSG for sending this and giving me a fix for my Pulitzer Prize for Fiction project. And here is how this book begins. It opens with a quote from the Journals of John Cheever in 1971, with the same photo that is on the cover. My daughter says that our dinner table is like a shark tank. I go into a spin. I'm not a shark. I'm a dolphin. Mary is the shark, etc. But what we stumble into is the banality of family situations. As for Susie, she makes the error of daring not to have been invented by me, of laughing at the wrong times, and of speaking the lines I have not written. Very interesting beginning to this book, written by Susie. And it begins with a note to the reader. And part one, there is a prologue. I don't usually do the prologues. Let me skip to the first chapter. Chapter one is Becoming a Writer. My father's professional writing career began in 1930 with a short story that reads like a memoir. He titled it, I Was Expelled from Prep School, and he wrote it soon after he had been expelled from prep school. Twice. The prep school in question was Thayer Academy in Braintree, Massachusetts, south of Boston. The story is the sad, sad tale of a brilliant boy who is misunderstood by uptight teachers, a pompous headmaster, and distracted parents. It's an addition to what would become the modern American genre, the confessional tale of the disenfranchised and misunderstood child trapped in a mindless world of institutions dedicated to meaningless status. 20 years before J.D. Salinger's Holden Caulfield sneered in the opening paragraph of Catcher in the Rye at all that David Copperfield kind of crap, and 50 years before Mary Carr and Tara Westover, his first published story showed that most adults were a bunch of corrupt, crazy, hypocritical phonies. That is the opening of When All the Men Wore Hats, on the stories of John Cheever by Susan Cheever. Sounds fascinating. And, again, maybe that's not up your alley, but it's definitely up mine. So the next book is something that was recommended to me by one of the booksellers from Montana Book Company, which is my favorite independent bookstore, Essie, who tends to have taste that is very much in line with mine. So you can imagine I was very excited to get this recommendation from her. So this is something that I actually bought for myself. The Entire Sky by Joe Wilkins. And one of the things I love about getting these recommendations from booksellers like Essie is I had not heard of this book, although it had been recently released. So I pay attention to book releases pretty closely for this channel. And if something got by me, it probably got by a lot of other people. So it sounds so good, and I can't wait to read it. And again, since Essie's taste is usually pretty in line with mine, I trust her very much. A poignant story about a troubled boy on the run, an aging rancher, and a woman at a crossroads who find unexpected solace in the family they make. With his long hair and penchant for guitar, teenage Justin is the spitting image of his idol, Kurt Cobain, a resemblance that has often marked him an outcast. After being abandoned by his mother, he lives on the street for a time in Seattle, busking to get by, before finally being sent to live with an uncle. But when his persistent, simmering abuse from his uncle finally boils over, Justin has no choice but to break free in a violent act that will haunt him and try to make it on his own as a runaway. Meanwhile, in rural Montana, Renee Bouchard, a rancher nearing retirement, grieves the recent death of his wife. Her passing has revealed how fractured the Bouchards have become, as Renee's relationship with his daughter, headstrong Leanne, is particularly estranged. As old wounds ache anew and father and daughter doubt the possibility of reconciliation, each nevertheless privately yearns for it. That reconciliation becomes possible with the arrival of Justin, whose wanderings bring him to the Bouchard family ranch, providing Renee and Leanne a chance to reconnect as they take this boy in as their own. Before long, however, Justin's past threatens to ensnare him, jeopardizing not only his new bond with the Bouchards, but also the home he's finally been able to claim. With its lyricism, tangible evocation of place, and piercing insights reminiscent of the novels of Barbara Kingsolver and Kent Harif, The Entire Sky is an unforgettable story anchored by indelible, endearing characters. It confirms Joe Wilkins as one of the most gifted young American writers at work today. And if I hadn't already been interested in the book, that comparison to Barbara Kingsolver definitely was the thing that said, Greg, you need to get this book. So here it is, The Entire Sky by Joe Wilkins. Here is how it begins. Chapter 1. After the pickup sped past, the boy crawled up out of the weeds and cheatgrass and started again down the slope of the mountain road. Paperboard guitar, case in hand, green canvas backpack jouncing about his ears and shoulders. The cold afternoon light hazed with road dust. He was moving fast, breathing hard. He could taste it, the dust. It's the opening of The Entire Sky by Joe Wilkins. Can't wait to read that as well. I have already read The Stand-In Dad by Alex Summers, and I know a bunch of people who watch my channel have also been reading this book, which is very gratifying because it means I've been able to talk to a lot of people about this book. It's The Stand-In Dad by Alex Summers. This was sent to me by Avon. I'm so grateful for that because this was something I had wanted to read for Pride Month and ended up not having the patience. I read it in May, and it was very good. If you have liked Matt Cain, say The Secret Life of Albert Entwistle, or Becoming Ted, this would be right up your street as well. If you just need something kind of cozy and fun and familiar. I'm sorry, I'm jostling the camera because I'm trying to plug in my laptop, which is next to me quietly dying. And of course I can't get it plugged in. There we go. So I'm not going to read the description because I read it. I can tell you. You have David, who owns a flower shop, and one day he looks out the front window and sees Meg, who's crying on the bench outside his store. It turns out she was supposed to meet her parents because they are going to be planning the flowers for her upcoming wedding to her partner, Hannah. And her parents texted her to say that they're not coming. And there's an implication that because they have not been able to really accept Meg as a lesbian before, they're not going to show up to any of the events to help plan the wedding, and that they probably won't be coming either. David offers to step in and go on all of those appointments with Meg. He will help her with the flowers, obviously, but he will go and help her pick out a cake and pick out a dress and stand in as a sort of parental figure for her because he was rejected by his family when he came out, and he doesn't want to see the same thing that happened to him happen to her. It's such a sweet book and a perfect, cozy, heartwarming hug of a book for Pride if you're looking for something like that. And it is out now in the United States, as is The Entire Sky, and I would just highly recommend it. There is a prologue. We're just going to skip to chapter 1, which comes from David. No matter what David tried, he couldn't get the new mixed bouquets to sit right. He must have been crouched down in the window of the shop for 10 minutes before he, or maybe his knees, gave up, and he moved on to the rest of the morning's list. That's the opening of The Stand-In Dad by Alex Summers. A really fun read for Pride, but also beyond Pride, because Pride happens all year. It's just a great, cozy story about people doing good things for each other and found family and acceptance and love, and it's so good. Chef's kiss. It's so good. The next one was sent to me by FSG MCD. It's The Doorman by Chris Pavone. This is also already released, but it was sent to me by the publisher. They sent me this nice finished copy of it, so thank you to them. And I know a lot of people have been enjoying this book already, but in case you're unfamiliar, here is the description. Chicky Diaz is everyone's favorite doorman at the Bohemia, the most famous apartment house in the world, home of celebrities, financiers, and New York's cultural elite. Up in the penthouse, Emily Longworth seems to have the perfect everything, all except her husband, whom she'd quietly loathed even before the recent revelations about where the money comes from. But his wealth is immense, their prenup is ironclad, and Emily can't bring herself to leave him. Yet. Downstairs in 2A, Julian Sonnenberg has just received a devastating phone call. He's getting the distinct sense that his cosmopolitan career in the art world is hurtling to an end, and that he's just not that useful to anyone anymore. Meanwhile, gathered in the Bohemia's bowels, the building's working-class staff is taking in the news that just a few miles uptown, a black man has been killed by the police, leading to a demonstration, a counter-demonstration, and a long night of violence across the Tinderbox city. As Chicky changes into his uniform for tonight's shift, he finds himself breaking a cardinal rule of the job. Tonight, he'll be carrying a gun. bought only hours earlier before he had any idea what's about to happen at the Bohemia. Tonight in the city, enemies will clash, loyalties will be tested, secrets will be revealed, and lives will be lost. I mean, if you're looking for a summer thriller, it sounds like a really interesting. Joel has actually already listened to the audio of this book, so when we do our wrap up for the month of May, he will be able to talk about it, and I would love to catch up to it. Chapter 1, Front Door. Chicky Diaz stands on his little patch of the earth, the clean, quiet sidewalk in front of the Bohemia apartments, thinking, there sure are a lot of great places to kill someone in this city. Let's just leave it at that. Intriguing little opening line right there. And move on to another book that had been featured in my guide to like summer reading and releases over the course of the summer. This one is The Tiny Things Are Heavier by Esther Ifesinachi Okonkwo. Now, because they sent me a final copy of the book, it doesn't say what the release date is. So let me pull this up really quickly and I can tell you. So this will be released on June 24th and has a beautiful, beautiful cover. If you can see it. When you're far away, it's hard to see the detail, but it is a gorgeous and stunning and really striking cover in person. This is published by Bloomsbury, so thank you to Bloomsbury for sending a nice finished copy of the book. Here is what it is about. A heart-rending debut novel about a Nigerian immigrant as she tries to find her place at home and in America. A powerful epic about love, grief, family, and belonging. It follows Sami, who is a Nigerian woman who comes to the United States for graduate school 2 weeks after her brother Mezi attempts suicide. Plagued by the guilt of leaving Mezi behind, Sami struggles to fit into her new life as a student and an immigrant. Lonely and homesick, she soon enters a complicated relationship with her boisterous Nigerian roommate, Bayo, a relationship that plummets into deceit when she falls for Brian, a biracial American whose estranged Nigerian father left the States immediately after his birth. Bonded by their feelings of unbelonging and a vague sense of kinship, Sami and Brian transcend the challenges of their new relationship. During summer break, Sami and Brian visit the bustling city of Lagos, Nigeria, where Sami hopes to reconcile with Mezi, and Brian plans to connect with his father. But when a shocking and unexpected event throws their lives into disarray, it exposes the cracks in Sami's relationships and forces her to confront her notions of self and familial love. A daring and ambitious novel rendered in stirring, tender prose, The Tiny Things Are Heavier is a captivating portrait that explores the hardships of migration, the subtleties of Nigeria's class system, and how far we'll go to protect those we love. I think you can really sense from that why I was so interested in this book, and I can't wait to read it. Here is how it begins. Part 1. Sami notices his legs first, hairy and stumpy, the part not covered by his tan-colored shorts. He's standing by the airport's exit, watching a woman on tiptoes, a piece of cardboard held above her head. His name is Bayo, Sami's new roommate. She'd imagined him to be taller. Over the phone, he sounded like a big man, a kind of gushing boisterousness about him. And he'd once told her, unprompted, that he ate 12 bananas in one sitting. Let's stop there. I can't wait to read this book. It sounds really great. And again, it will be out June 25th. Another upcoming release that was sent to me by Knopf. A Wooded Shore and Other Stories by Thomas McGuane. I have wanted to read Thomas McGuane for a while. I have a copy of his story collection, Cloudburst. I know not everybody is a fan of story collections. I am a big fan, and he has a Montana connection, which makes this even more interesting, or him even more interesting as a writer to me, because I live in Montana. Here is what this is about. From the award-winning master of the short story, 9 shattering, hilarious tales of men on the outskirts of America, habituating the motels, hot dog stands, and dive bars time forgot, grappling with a world that is swiftly changing and dreaming of a return to the wooded shores of their youths. In these 9 peerless stories, including the novella-length title story, a family boating trip veers into emotional disaster while very narrowly avoiding the physical. A would-be cheater hands over his car, his prized possession, for a shot with a pretty girl. A furniture magnate and his filmmaker daughter visit his impoverished hometown. A doctor's long-ago affair returns with a bitter pill. Crackling with wry humor, shot through with both wisdom and pain, these are stories of grifters and dreamers, of the lovelorn and the lawless, stories of the ongoing dissonance between the lives we want and the lives the world will allow. And this is scheduled to be published October 14th. So there's a ways to go. But if you want to pre-order it, do it now. Because it's also on the short side. Let's see how many pages. It's 177 pages. That's not even 200. So yeah, I'm really excited to catch up to this book and finally read Thomas McGuane. So A Wooded Shore is the first story, and it begins Wide Spot. Or, hang on. Wide Spot is the first story. Sorry, A Wooded Shore is the title. So Wide Spot. The small bore politics I've been caught up in for the past 30 years has provided, beyond the usual attractions of graft and corruption, a vivid lesson in regional geography, as I've had to make sure my constituents would keep showing up to vote. Still, it had been a very long time since I'd last visited Prairiedale. Let's stop there. That is the beginning of A Wooded Shore by Thomas McGuane, which will be coming out in October. If that sounds interesting, mark your calendars or get in a pre-order now, because it will be coming. You know, the year has been going very quickly. October will be here before you know it. Another gift from Knopf, Swallows by Natsuo Kirino. This will be released on September 9th. So also a little bit out, but I'm willing to bet a lot of people are interested by Natsuo Kirino. Probably more people have heard of Natsuo Kirino than Thomas McGuane. This is translated by Lisa Hoffman-Kuroda. If you're unfamiliar, Natsuo Kirino wrote the book Out, which I've seen very mixed response to on BookTube, but which sounds really fascinating. So this is the newest translation, and it follows Riki, a single woman in Tokyo, desperate to escape the precarity of her life. Motoi and Yuko, a wealthy couple, are desperate for a child. The Plant Clinic, an agency designed to circumvent Japanese surrogacy restrictions, is desperate to make a match. But when desperation meets desire, who truly holds the power? The highly anticipated new novel from the author of Out, Natsuo Kirino's Swallows, pulls at the seams of society, skewering our understanding of motherhood, self-worth, bodily autonomy, and class. Fascinating, right? Can't wait to read. I can't wait to read all of these books. I will keep saying that about every single one of them, but it is what it is. Chapter 1, Hard-Boiled Egg. A single white egg rattled around the bottom of a small pot. At the local Miyoshi Mart, a carton of 10 costs 198 yen, the cheapest option around here. At a rate of 1 a day, the whole carton would last for 10 days. Cheap, packed with protein, easy to prepare. Just put one in a pot with some water, wait 15 minutes, and done. A hard-boiled egg. That is the beginning of Swallows by Natsuo Kirino, translated by Lisa Hoffman-Kuroda. It will be released on September 9th, so again, maybe one to mark your calendar for or get a pre-order in now. Now, I recently got a copy of Open Heaven by Sean Hewitt from Knopf and read it and loved it. Sean Hewitt's previous books have been poetry collections and a memoir. And since I loved Open Heaven so much, I really wanted to find his memoir, All Down Darkness Wide. And wouldn't you know it, a week later, it turned up in my local used bookstore. Beautiful cover, very faint illustration from far away, but it's a gorgeous cover. And I was so excited to find this book. Let's read the description of it for you. By turns devastating and soaring, an ambitious memoir debut from one of Irish literature's rising stars, Sean Hewitt. When Sean Hewitt meets Elias, the two fall headlong into a love story. But as Elias struggles with severe mental illness, they soon come face to face with crisis. All Down Darkness Wide is a perceptive and unflinching meditation on the burden of living in a world that too often sets happiness and queer life at odds, and a tender and honest portrayal of what it's like to be caught in the undertow of a loved one's deep depression. As lives are made and unmade, this memoir asks what love can endure and what it cannot. And let's leave it at that. There is more in the description, but I think that gives you a really good sense of what this is about. And Open Heaven was such a beautiful book that I really can't wait to read more of Sean Hewitt's work. It begins. The Oratory of St. James's Cemetery in Liverpool has no windows along the whole length of its outer walls, only a long rectangular skylight, its leaded panes half mossed over, lets the winter sun reach down and touch the white marble statues staring blankly inside. A mortuary chapel, but long closed up, its coffered ceiling and tall carved columns are mostly in shadow. Years ago, as the great homes of the city were pulled down stone by stone, the monuments of proud families, monuments of terracotta and marble and bronze, were hoisted here and locked away, and so the wealth of the city, wrenched from far-off lands and furnished from blood, was hidden, and so forgotten. That's the opening of All Down Darkness Wide, a memoir by Sean Hewitt. Heading to the home stretch here. Now, I've heard great things about Evidence of Things Unseen by Marianne Wiggins on and off since it was published, and have wanted to get around to reading it. I actually first heard of it as a Pulitzer Prize finalist the year that The Known World by Edward P. Jones won. So this is something that would be an addendum to my Pulitzer Prize project at some point. But also, Middle of the Book March has mentioned this book a couple of times on her channel, and she is a huge fan, which revived my interest in reading it. And I think it would be a perfect addendum to my Pulitzer Prize project when I get around to The Known World by Edward P. Jones, which I want to be soon. Here's the description. This poetic novel describes America at the brink of the atomic age. Foss, a veteran of the trenches of France, has returned to Tennessee a true believer in science and the future of technology. On a trip to the Outer Banks to study the Perseid meteor shower, he falls in love with Opal. Foss brings his new wife back to Knoxville, where he runs a photography studio with his former army buddy Flash. When Flash's appetite for pleasure implicates the couple in his lawlessness, Foss and Opal seek refuge on Opal's inherited farm on the Clinch River. But when the New Deal claims the farm for the Tennessee Valley Authority, Foss seeks work at the Oak Ridge Laboratory, Site X in the government's race to build the bomb. It's there, when Opal mysteriously falls ill, that Foss's great faith in science deserts him. Hypnotic and powerful, Evidence of Things Unseen constructs a heartbreaking arc through 20th century American life and belief. Sounds so interesting and potentially powerful. And as I said, I've been interested in reading this book for a long time, so I will be happy to finally get around to it. Here's how it begins. White Sands. Somewhere in the heart of North America, there is a desert where the heat of several suns has fused the particles of sand into a single sheet of glass so dazzling it sends a constant signal to the moon. On a map, this unmarked space looks like a printer's error, an empty region on a page the cartographer forgot. One way or another, each of us is drawn to this forbidden place. Like a magnet, this glass desert calls our irons the way the whale's heart used to beckon a harpoon. In our dreams or in our fears, we imagine what it must be like to walk upon this surface. Let's stop there. Beautiful opening to Evidence of Things Unseen by Marianne Wiggins. Next is The Name of the World by Dennis Johnson. I've read several books by Dennis Johnson. I'm a fan of his. I fully think Train Dreams should have won the Pulitzer Prize for fiction in 2012. I have a whole video about that. I'll link it down below. And this looks like a very tiny book, and I saw it at my local used bookstore and just basically had to grab it. I had to. There is not a description on the back. So what I'm going to do is pull up a quick description of the book on Bookshop, and bear with me while I do that. It's The Name of the World by Dennis Johnson. And this is published by Perennial. Here is the description from Bookshop. The acclaimed author of Jesus' Son and Already Dead returns with a beautiful, haunting, and darkly comic novel. The Name of the World is a mesmerizing portrait of a professor at a Midwestern university who has been patient in his grief after an accident takes the lives of his wife and child, and has permitted that grief to enlarge him. Michael Reed is living a posthumous life. In spite of outward appearances, he holds a respectable university teaching position. He is an articulate and attractive addition to local social life. He's a dead man walking. Nothing can touch Reed, nothing can move him, although he observes with a mordant clarity the lives whirling vigorously around him. Of his recent bereavement, nearly 4 years earlier, he observes, "I'm speaking as I'd speak of a change in the Earth's climate, or the recent war." Let's stop there. I think that tells you exactly why I'm interested in this book. It is 129 pages, so it should be pretty easy to fit in at some point, and here is how it opens. Since my early teens, I've associated everything to do with college, the academic life, with certain images borne toward me, I suppose, from the TV screen. In particular, the films of the 1930s they used to broadcast relentlessly when I was a boy, and especially from a single scene. Fresh-faced young people come in from an autumn night to stand around the fireplace in the home of a beloved professor. I smell the bonfire smoke in their clothes and the professor's aromatic pipe tobacco, and I feel the general, unquestioned sweetness of youth, of autumn, of college, the sweetness of this life. That is the opening of The Name of the World by Dennis Johnson. He writes beautifully about grief, so that should be a very compelling book. We have 5 books left. The next one is Boy Meets Boy by David Levithan. This is a 10th anniversary edition I found at my local used bookstore. It was hailed as a groundbreaking book when it was originally published in 2003. It went on to garner a Lambda Literary Award among numerous other accolades and has remained continuously in print. And the only plot description is a quote from the book. I was the first openly gay president of my 3rd grade class. I have seen men holding hands walking down the street in a big city, and I have read about women getting married in a state that's not so far away. I have found a boy I might just love, and I have not run away. I believe that I can be anyone I might want to be. All these things give me strength. It would be great to fit it in Pride Month. I don't know that it will be possible, although again, it is a short book. Here's how it begins. Now away we go. 9 p.m. on a November Saturday, Joni, Tony, and I are out on the town. Tony is from the next town over, and he needs to get out. His parents are extremely religious. It doesn't even matter which religion. They're all the same at a certain point, and few of them want a gay boy cruising around with his friends on a Saturday night. So every week, Tony feeds us Bible stories. Then on Saturday, we show up at his doorstep, well-versed in parables and earnestness, dazzling his parents with our blinding purity. They slip him a 20 and tell him to enjoy our study group. That is the opening of Boy Meets Boy by David Levithan. I've read other books by David Levithan and really enjoyed them, so can't wait to do that. Here's another book I've already read, Captain's Courageous by Rudyard Kipling. I watched the film adaptation from 1937, I believe, and loved it. Read the book, didn't quite live up to that. Basically, the premise is you have a spoiled rich kid who falls off of the ship liner where he is, the sort of passenger ship that he's on with his mother in the book, and he ends up getting picked up by a fisherman and taken onto a fishing boat, and he has to stay on that boat while they are out trying to gather their catch to head home, and he learns the value of hard work and being a good person and an honorable person and doing a hard day's work. And it opens, Chapter 1. The weather door of the smoking room had been left open to the North Atlantic fog as the big liner rolled and lifted, whistling to warn the fishing fleet. That chain boy's the biggest nuisance aboard, said a man in a frieze overcoat, shutting the door with a bang. He isn't wanted here. He's too fresh. It's Captain's Courageous by Rudyard Kipling. I've been kind of watching out for a copy of Hondo by Louis L'Amour at my local used bookstore, and a copy finally showed up. If you follow along, you know I'm also very interested in movies and Oscar movies and classic movies, and Hondo is a movie that I would need to get around to watching at some point. So I figured if I'm going to do that, I might as well also read the book. The man called Hondo. He was a big man, wide-shouldered and the lean, hard-boned face of a desert rider. There was no softness in him. His toughness was ingrained and deep, without cruelty, yet quick, hard, and dangerous. Whatever wells of gentleness might lie within him were guarded and deep. He was Hondo Lane, a man not soon forgotten by those he encountered on the danger trail. And there you go. Here's how this book opens. There's a foreword. It opens with a map. I love a book that opens with a map. That's the first one in all these books. Chapter 1. He rolled the cigarette in his lips, liking the taste of the tobacco, squinting his eyes against the sun glare. His buckskin shirt, seasoned by sun, rain, and sweat, smelled stale and old. His jeans had long since faded to a neutral color that lost itself against the desert. That's the opening of Hondo by Louis L'Amour, a Western classic. I got myself another play to build out my play collection. I'm a big fan of Tennessee Williams. I saw the movie The Rose Tattoo a couple of years ago and remember thinking it's not among Tennessee Williams' best work, but there's a spellbinding performance from Anna Magnani, who won the Best Actress prize for that film in 1955. So when I saw this had turned up at my local used bookstore, I had to get it because I would be very curious to read it. Larger Than Life, a fable, a Greek tragedy, a comedy, a melodrama. The Tony Award-winning The Rose Tattoo is a valentine from Tennessee Williams to anyone who has ever been in love. In the midst of her anger and grief over news that her late husband had been unfaithful, Serafina Della Rosa is courted by a Sicilian truck driver who has the virile body of her husband and the face of a clown. His name, Mangiacavallo, means eat a horse in Italian. Teary-eyed, he declares, "I am a human being that drives a truck of bananas." His clumsy flirting unlocks Serafina's fiery passion, wit, and eventually her capacious love. Now, one of the problems of the film adaptation is that this Sicilian truck driver is played by Burt Lancaster, and he is wildly miscast in the film. However, again, Anna Magnani is chef's kiss. Perfect. So I would be very curious. Let's see. Plays tend to begin with a bit of scene dressing, so let's start with that. Act 1. It is the hour that the Italians call prima sera, the beginning of dusk. Between the house and the palm trees burns the female star with an almost emerald luster. The mothers of the neighborhood are beginning to call their children home to supper, in voices near and distant, urgent and tender, like the variable notes of wind and water. There are 3 children, Bruno, Salvatore, and Vivi, ranged in the front of the house, one with a red paper kite, one with a hoop, and a little girl with a doll dressed as a clown. They are in attitudes of momentary repose, all looking up at something, a bird or a plane, passing over as the mother's voices call them. That's the opening of The Rose Tattoo by Tennessee Williams. The last book that I got in the month of May is Other Voices, Other Rooms by Truman Capote. I have only read In Cold Blood by Truman Capote, and at the end of the year, I read The Christmas Memory and The Thanksgiving Visitor, and I'm blanking on what the other one, the 3 Christmas stories that are usually sold together. And that sort of got me more interested in reading more books by Truman Capote. And this one is particularly interesting because it is semi-autobiographical. It is about his youth, and that ties into To Kill a Mockingbird because he was friends with Harper Lee when they were both children, and she grew up and wrote To Kill a Mockingbird, which was at least partially inspired by the town where she grew up, and the character of Dill was inspired by Truman Capote. So here's kind of his take on it, and it's a tiny little thing. It's an extraordinary novel of the modern South, the story of a sensitive boy who bridges the fears and loneliness of adolescence under the opposing influences of 2 people. His uncle, a cynical, too worldly wise man, and his friend, a sassy, naive tomboy. That's Harper Lee. It's Harper Lee. Here's how this book begins. Part 1. Now, a traveler must make his way to Noon City by the best means he can, for there are no buses or trains heading in that direction, though 6 days a week a truck from the Chewberry Turpentine Company collects mail and supplies in the next-door town of Paradise Chapel. Occasionally, a person bound for Noon City can catch a ride with the driver of the truck, Sam Radcliffe. It's a rough trip no matter how you come, for these washboard roads will loosen up even brand new cars pretty fast, and hitchhikers always find the going bad. It's the opening of Other Voices, Other Rooms by Truman Capote, and that completes my book haul for the month of May. Look at all those books. Can't wait to get into them. I would love to hear which books you are interested in, if any, what you might recommend to me based on my interest in these books, and all that stuff in the comment section down below. As always, I really appreciate your time, and I will be back. Until next time, happy reading.